Charlyn Huss, you are a Pilates master, which by itself is a pretty phenomenal achievement, but you're also the inventor of a very unique fitness apparatus that I want to discuss today. It's called the CoreSpring. And I'm guilty of this because I call it a fitness band, but it is not a fitness band. Can you tell people what CoreSpring is for those who may not be familiar with it?
Thank you for having me, Joe, and thank you for asking me that question. CoreSpring is, and pardon my pun, an offspring of Pilates. I am a Pilates teacher. I've been a client of Pilates since 1988, and I've been teaching it since the mid to late 90s. I had back pain and I had scoliosis in my back. So the back pain started in childhood. The scoliosis was actually identified in my 20s. The back pain that I was experiencing led to the scoliosis. So I was always trying to find a way to feel better because I swam. And so in the pool and after swimming, I noticed that I felt better. But then when you can't get in the pool, what do? So I started stretching on a beach towel in my bedroom when I was about 11 or 12. And so I just developed a lifelong habit of curating different things that I could do at home on my own. And when I came upon Pilates in my 20s, I was shocked at how it could challenge me. Like I couldn't balance on my right foot, I'd always fall over, I'd have to be next to a wall. It was my bad side. After, I think about 3 months of just doing Pilates to the exclusion of everything else, I could do that. I could stand on both. So I became a teacher because I just couldn't stop talking about what it had done for me. And then I became a studio owner. And I became a master teacher of Pilates, which is someone who teaches teachers how to teach it. I'm comprehensively certified on all apparatus, including the mat, and even down to gadgets created by Mr. Pilates and smaller accessories. So there's a whole universe of Pilates out there that is kind of unknown now, with the reformer Pilates emerging as the form of Pilates that most people, they kind of know about the mat, they know reformer Pilates. In the Pilates world, reformer Pilates doesn't really exist that way. It's Pilates on the reformer. Reformer Pilates is something that's been coined to promote classes, and it's a marketing tool. And hey, I'm all for it. Get people on that reformer. I love the reformer. But because I was studying all these different modalities, including Pilates, I studied Alexander technique, I studied Feldenkrais, sports medicine, physics, you name it. Because of that, I sort of thought outside the box, because Pilates mat work is actually quite difficult to do. A lot of people aren't willing to do that. They want the results, but they don't want to have to get on a mat and try to remember how to do an exercise or follow a video, or their neck bothers them because they have to lift their head. About 10, 15 years into my practice, people would come to me and say, oh, I've worked with 3 different Pilates teachers. I've been doing it for 10 years. And I would say, okay, you're still in the same town. Why aren't you with that Pilates teacher? I got bored. And this happened often enough that I realized what happens is, because there are challenges in doing Pilates, it's not an easy peasy workout. Teachers will actually start to limit what they're giving their clients to do. And this is not a diss on my industry at all. But I didn't create CoreSpring because of the limitations of Pilates. CoreSpring came organically from my curiosity about how to take elements of Pilates and make them more accessible to people. So people would have as much fun doing Pilates as I did, right? Because I've never been bored. I was extremely intrigued with the springs on the machines. But like every other Pilates teacher, when we went to the mat, we used a band. And that's just how it is. Well, I had a mastery student in my teacher training program, and he attended conferences with me. And he asked me this question: why is it when we're on the machines with Pilates, we use springs, but when we go to the mat, we use bands? Why can't I get my own spring? And I was like, what do you mean? Because I want my own spring. Where can I find that? I said, it doesn't exist. I went to the biggest annual Pilates conference every year for 20 years. Never saw that. So we put together a Franken CoreSpring. Right? CoreSpring pretty much named itself. We have 2 patents on CoreSpring. When you're working with the spring directly with the body, it's a very different experience from a band. And it's a very different experience from working on a Pilates machine. It had a liveliness to it that the band doesn't have. And it's much stronger than a band. A band with this level of resistance would be really thick and would really cumbersome, and you really couldn't move. Springs don't have that problem because it's a spiral. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's a spiraling storage of energy. that expands.
Very interesting. And I want to call attention to the fact that it has a sleeve around it. So I've made the mistake that I'm assuming a lot of people have made. I have seen fitness bands that have this sleeve. And I said originally to you off camera, I thought I was using CoreSpring with other people who have had them. And you said, where are they getting them from? And I said, I don't know. And you said they weren't using CoreSpring. So
We're launching right now.
yeah, for people who are watching us right now or using, who may have or know people who have these fitness bands with sleeves around them, that's not necessarily the CoreSpring. You literally, I'm glad you're showing me this because that was my next question. You literally have a spring apparatus in this. That's made of metal.
It's stainless steel.
Wow. Okay.
It's marine grade, not for salt water, but for chlorine.
Okay.
Because there's a pool program with CoreSpring that's launching later this year.
Right.
So, because my first love was swimming, and I created a program called Hydrotone Pilates. So I was outside of the box. I hand this to Pilates teachers, and they don't know what to do with it. People would look at it and be like, what am I supposed to do with that? It's helping people understand you live pain-free. I have no pain. I have no pain. I just came from a 3-week trip across the outback of Australia on a train. And I had, wake up in this train, my neck would be kind of tweaked, and my back, it wasn't comfortable. And I even walked around for a day going, my God, my back is tweaked and I wish I had my Wanda chair, which is a Pilates piece of equipment, because I know exactly what I would do on that to fix this issue with my back. And then I thought, I'm going to recreate that exercise with CoreSpring, and I did. And 30 seconds later, the pain was gone. I'm all about efficiency, all about I don't waste time with things that don't work. I love the low tech of Pilates.
It's a great story. When I look at, say, traditional fitness bands, I see that some of them actually, they come in different colors and they coordinate these colors with pounds of resistance. And some of them claim to have pounds of resistance, sometimes 75 pounds, for instance. How many pounds of resistance, if that's even a thing, has the CoreSpring been rated for? If that's even a thing.
To measure the spring pounds, which is not quite a gravitational pound, it's a rough equivalent, you have to hook it up and pull it. So I think for CoreSpring, I take my leaf out of the Pilates world. Whoever asks how much a Pilates spring weighs? No one. No one. In all the years that I've been teaching, one person, a guy who had a background in personal training, wanted to know the pounds. And when we're talking about the reformer, we're talking about hundreds of pounds. Some of the springs are 100, some 50, roughly. And I say roughly because you have to pull it against something and measure it. Mm-hmm. Even when you're working on the reformer, you're not taking the spring to its full expansion. You're never going to take CoreSpring to its full expansion unless you were like 12 feet tall. So I'm not sure I can tell you what the spring pounds are, but I can also tell you that no person will ever experience all of those pounds. So I'll show you it's an original move to CoreSpring. It's called Da Vinci. And this was actually created for a client of mine who had a 75% tear in his left rotator cuff. So he couldn't do a lot of Pilates stuff, he couldn't do planking, he couldn't do a lot of things. You stand with your feet just like at pelvic bone distance apart, not quite what you would call hip distance, right in here. And we come to slinky slack. Now, the actual CoreSpring weighs about 1 pound, 3 ounces. So you feel the weight of it, and even in slack, it starts to draw the attention of your body, your mind body. And I don't know how else to explain that, you just have to hold it to understand what I mean. So you come from what we call slinky slack to smiley slack, where you take the weight of the CoreSpring onto your thighs and it looks like a smile, right? I'm not working for that. But once you touch the CoreSpring, and this is where the direct spring resistance comes in, once you touch the CoreSpring to the body, your transverse abdominis starts to fire up, and your shoulder blades find their optimal position on your rib cage. Not ideal, but optimal, and it's very immediate if you allow it to happen. You come up to what we call chest line. You open the CoreSpring and touch your sternum bone. You actually take it right to the bone. With this client, and with other clients, I was always working with it, if you can see, it was away from the body. And that day, I just said, so touch your sternum bone. And the pain went away from his shoulder immediately. I said, okay, now lift your sternum bone into the CoreSpring and take your arms behind the shoulder line. And he started to straighten his elbows. He goes, I feel it. I said, soften your elbows. Took it right out of the shoulder. So it took it out of his rotator cuff. You open, you're letting the lower body respond to that, and you come upright, and then you let it go back to what we affectionately call a squishy beach ball, right? It's like a beach ball just deflating in your hands. And the reason I did that was because when people come out of this expansion, they're coming up and they do this. Because the spring, again, it's lively, it's got energy, it's going to pull you in different directions. But just like Pilates, you are using the spring in both directions. As it's expanding and as it's going to slack, you're controlling that resistance. And then we go into something called Eagle, which is this, it's upper back expansion, and it takes a Pilates concept that I think fixed my spine, because I no longer have scoliosis in my spine. My oldest client, she just turned 100. It was very difficult for her to lie down on those machines. When they come in to see me, they're doing only CoreSpring because they can sit in a chair or stand.
So this is definitely something that can definitely benefit Pilates instructors, especially those who are working with those who can't use a lot of the traditional Pilates machines. It's interesting you said a lot of Pilates instructors say, I don't know what to do with this. Well, you're going to meet quite a few at the AAAI convention June 6th to the 8th in Atlantic City. I know they're coming. Since you have developed this yourself, I know a lot of fitness trainers have asked me in the past, hey, I've got this great idea for a fitness product. How do I bring it to market? Are there any tips or things that you would say to that fitness trainer watching us right now who has this great idea that's going to revolutionize everything? How can they create their dream and bring it to market?
That's a really great question. That's actually one of the number one questions that I get asked from people. How are you doing this? So what you do is you find a patent lawyer. You're going to pay them a nominal fee, and they're going to do a search. And what they're searching for is artwork. And what they look for is, does this idea exist? Visual form. It has to be a drawing or a physical object. And if they find it, they'll come back and say, sorry, it already exists. You can't do it. So that's what you do. Because if you're going to invest your time and money in something, you want to make sure that it's not already out there. You really can't talk about it publicly until you've secured your patents. You have to have the infrastructure. You have to have your product manufactured. You have to have enough inventory, and that's a risk. This is all a risk. Patents are not easy to get. They're very difficult. They're really complicated. You have to work. Everything that you're talking about, that I'm talking about, I had to put into legal terms and argue with the lawyers about what meant what. So it was a really intense process. So it's not for the faint at heart. You have to be really passionate about what you're creating. So that's really the third ingredient that you need. You need to get with an expert, find out if it exists. Once you decide that you want to patent that, you apply for your patents, and then you have to wait. Could take up to 1.5 years. But you have to have the passion and the patience. You can't be totally motivated by money. That's where the passion comes in. What I thought was, I understand right now that I'm the person who can develop this thing. Given all my background and everything that it just all came together, I knew I had to be the one to at least initiate the process of introducing this concept to the world. And so you have to know that. You have to be very confident that you're the one who can do it. Because then you're not going to withstand the pressure from the patent, the money, the things that don't work.
It's good advice.
Then you go to conferences.
Yeah, and definitely help your marketing that way. It's really good advice, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an easy process, which is essentially what I tell people. You got to have patience, and you don't want to tell the world about your world-changing invention before you have that patent. Otherwise, you'll run into some...
will be naysayers. There will be negative people out there. There will be people who don't like you, and they don't like your product, and you just have to have a thick enough skin to know it's not personal.
How do you balance inventor, instructor, business owner, chief cook and bottle washer? You're doing it all. How in the world are you balancing all this so you can stay healthy?
Sometimes better than others. I went through I literally didn't know that I was seriously burned out. But I had just moved. I've moved twice in the last 3 years. Plus I'm taking care of my mom. The way I find balance is the practice. And I actually consider myself a burnout expert, because Pilates teachers, and maybe personal trainers, I don't know, but I know Pilates teachers and I know myself. I'm a healthcare practitioner for my clients, but you never get the credit for that. They're like, oh, you're just teaching fitness. Oh, it's just Pilates. But it's not easy to teach. So there's a high level of burnout. And so I brought myself through the lifestyle of being a business owner, and before I even had the invention, through the stress of the pandemic and losing my business and other things that were going on at that time. I think it's just, you must take care of your mind and body. You must move. You must stretch. And I made sure I stayed hydrated, stayed connected. to my friends and family. It's really important. You're not your resume. We are our relationships. It's really important. So those three things, especially staying hydrated, I can't emphasize it enough. You'll know when you're getting dehydrated, but it can actually affect you emotionally because it dehydrates your entire body, including your brain. And that can impact your emotions and your hormones and all the things. So you have to stay hydrated. You have to really eat well for you. And take care of your gut. It's super important. So that's really how I do it. I don't think you can avoid burnout if you're living at a certain level. I think you just have to be able to identify it and help yourself through it without too much shame and guilt about, oh, I'm not doing it right. It's just, you have to just, there I go again.
Charlyn Huss, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Atlantic City in June and trying out the CoreSpring myself.
Yeah, I really look forward to showing it to you, Joe.